We are here to talk about your research proposal. So this will be graded as a test, which means that we are going to spend 2 class periods on it. It is one of the most important assignments we do all year. So first thing, I need your research question. Remember that your research question must be specific, measurable, and researchable. And you're going to be actually executing this to answer the question. So make sure that you like your question. They have to be specific, measurable, and researchable. Next up is your population. Who are you representing in this study? Is it students at Bryan Station? People who live in Kentucky? People who've gone to college? Whatever. Then your sampling method is who you're actually going to talk to. How are you going to find these people? Is this a voluntary, convenience, or random method? And just let me know how you know. And finally, tell me how many participants you want to have. Tell me your study type. So you're going to delete experimental. If you're making an observational study, you're going to delete observational if you're having an experimental study. And then tell me how you know that it is experimental or observational. So for example, you might say, I'll be creating an observational study because I'll just ask people questions and not interfere in their lives. Now, on this slide, if you are doing an experimental study, you are going to delete this octagon and complete this slide. If you're doing an experimental study, you'll have one independent variable that you are adjusting or modifying or asking participants to adjust or modify. You'll have a dependent variable, which is what you measure, and then you'll have about 3 control variables, which is something that you'll keep the same. If you're not doing an experimental study, if you're doing an observational study, you'll go to the next slide and delete this octagon, and then you'll complete this slide. If you're doing an observational study, you'll have about 3 independent variables or traits that you're going to record about your sample. So that could be things like age, gender, academy, where you were born, all of those would be fine. Then your dependent variable is what you're interested in knowing about. So your dependent variable should directly relate to your research question. And then, like before, you'll have 3 control variables that will be the same about everybody in your sample. So on slides 5 and 6, you will only complete one of those slides. You'll delete the octagon for the study that you're doing and complete that slide. Then you're on to the last couple. These are the combating bias slides. Not every type of study is liable for every type of bias. So you only need to complete 3 of these 4 slides using at least 2 sentences each. So I gave you this format to consider. You might say, to combat blank type of bias, I will blank. And in the second blank, you give like the overview. We said, like for response bias, we said, we're going to follow up with people. Then be more specific. This means that in my study, I will have to blank. And in that last blank, say exactly what you will have to do for your specific study. So slides 8 through 11 are the types of bias. And for each of those, all you have to do is use this format. Tell me about your specific study. And remember, you are only doing 3 of those. So if your study is not subject to the placebo effect, then don't do the placebo effect slide. If your study is not subject to response bias, then don't do the response bias slide. And that is it. Have fun.